I'm here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
The whole fleet of them, what's on the ASA? My gosh.
Unidentified.
The acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Anomalous.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
Since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1 and 2,000 reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things.
Podcast.
Yes, it's Sunday, and you all know what that means. It's time for the Unidentified Anomalous Podcast. My name is Tom Thompson, aka Cortex Zero, as some of you know me as on X or Twitter, whatever you'd like to call it at this point. It seems pretty interchangeable these days. And over on YouTube, which is where we are now, and we're also streaming in a couple different places. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am joined by one of my partners in crime, Mr. Marduk Moadib Paul. Paul, how are you, sir?
I'm doing super, man. Thank you for asking. It's been a heck of a week.
Yeah, man, for sure, for sure. As you guys can clearly see, Digby is not here. Digby is very, very sick right now, and that is actually not an exaggeration. He believes that he has come down with Legionnaires, which I forgot that actually existed. I don't know anybody that's ever had it. It's a bacteria that you can pick up from water. Apparently, they have a new place of residence over in Morocco, and they have a pool. And Digby was fine. They're doing their thing. Beautiful location too. It actually looks over the sea. It's quite stunning. And they went swimming. He was having a good day. And next thing you know, super high fever. His face was really, really red, really achy. He says that compared to when he had COVID, that this is much worse. So Digby, I don't even know if you're watching or sleeping right now, but much love, my friend. We really, really hope you get better, because it sounds and looked nasty, because I was on video chat with him. Hello, Sandy, and hello, everybody that's here in the chat. We have some really interesting things to cover on the show today, but obviously we'll start with our usual banter. Paul, how was your week?
Man, busy and so much research. Like, we've been talking all week with different stuff, man. It's just been a weird week. Not so much in the world as far, I mean, the world's already on fire with everything, but just like all these things come to light, it's just been insane. It's just a different feel, man. It feels different in the world. Something's
Yeah, I have
happening.
to agree with that. Yeah, it's like there's a weird wave going on.
It is.
Which is one of the things that I was going to bring up today, so I guess that'll be sort of part of the intro too, is like some of the weird things that have been happening just for me personally, like out and about in the world. A lot of like synchronicities, and I understand there's a great debate to be had around synchronicities and coincidences, and I understand that human beings give things meaning, and there's pareidolia. I trust me. I've been down all of those roads and back, right?
Yeah.
But
never
for
ending.
me personally, there is a threshold though where it's like, okay, this is a coincidence, this is by chance, but then you cross over that line, and there are things that will happen in such a way and in such a sequence that you are not really left with many options other than saying, this is weird.
Yeah.
Right?
It becomes like a, yeah. It's definitely becomes
weird.
part of you, and you notice those patterns. That's the thing. Those patterns start happening over and over again. And I don't know if it's because you're looking for them, or if they just become so blaringly obvious for you. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it, right? So, so I'll give you an example, and this was just like the start of it. So I went on my lunch break at work the other day, and I was just pulling out of the parking lot. And to my left, there was a sign posted on a telephone pole. I think it was for like a yard sale of some sort. And it had numbers on it as well. And it was a sequence of threes. And I'm like, oh, hey, look, 333, blah, blah, blah. Like 6 seconds later, I'm sitting at the red light and I open my DMs on X. And our friend Paige, that's been on the show with us before, was watching our latest episode of the show and had sent me this really long message about like numerology and sequences of numbers. So what's weird about this whole thing is that like I see the 333. I'm like, heh. I'm making the left, and I start having like an inner dialogue with myself, like consciously thinking about synchronicities and what they could potentially mean. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, is this like some weird function of the universe or like some greater intelligence that's like waving at you? Or like how Diana Pasulka describes it in her recent work. And then to see that message from Paige, I'm just like, that's really strange that would happen at that moment. Aliens exist. I fucking love that. What's up? Rob, is that you? I think that's my friend Rob. IRL. I'm pretty sure that, I think, because his screen name was Aliens Exist, and now it's Aliens Exist. But I think I saw it on my Discord. It's great. No, so I met him. He was working at a local vape shop. Oh, what's up, dude? That is Rob. Yeah, I haven't seen him in person in quite a while because they were moving around and doing stuff. But him and his family they're fucking awesome. His dad is the one that I was telling you guys about. That when there was that landing at Fort Dix in the 70s, that he saw it. That's his dad.
Okay, now it's all coming together.
That's so crazy. Yeah, he's a good dude. Rob's a really, really cool guy, and I miss you, man. I hope we can get together sometime, dude, because it's been way too long. It's been a couple of years now.
I got to shout out to Skinny Bob too, man. Me and him were in a YouTube live premiere on another channel for Vetted. I'll throw him out there.
Earlier today?
No, it was like a couple of days ago, but me and Skinny Bob were there. I was like, look at Skinny Bob getting around.
I see Skinny Bob all over the place, man. He's great. He's definitely great. Yeah, Rob, thanks for being here, man. It's really nice to have friends from the real world here. Now, apparently, I forgot to mention this on the show last week, or maybe I did. I may have. My aunt, who I don't know in my life to be someone that delves quite deep into these subjects, she apparently watches the podcast like every week. This is my mom's sister. Okay. So, Aunt Sandy, if you're watching, I love you and miss you and hope you and my cousins and my uncle are all doing well. And hopefully we'll see you when we go on summer vacation in a few months down to Wildwood. But yeah, my Aunt Sandy was such a great person. And it's nice to know that families tuning in to watch the show. I think my other aunt and uncle watch, so that's really cool. My Uncle Joe's like really into these subjects as well. He gave me communion when I was a kid. I think it was like, oh, wow. 10. And he gave me a paperback version of it, and I've read it so many times. We're gonna try to get Whitley on the show at some point. Yeah, he seems pretty available. Yeah, I gotta talk to Whitley. That book changed my life. So we're gonna get right into it with our first segment here. There's been some news that we can talk about from the week. It was sort of a slow week, but some things did happen that are definitely of note. So let's just get right into it.
Beyond the mundane.
Now, to start off the show today, the first thing we're going to be going over is this upcoming SALT conference. A year ago, there was one of these that went down that Gary Nolan was a part of. And interestingly, if you go to SALT's YouTube channel, their most watched video was the presentation from Gary. Yeah, by like a long shot. It beat out a lot of other really key speakers from Europe. And so it's like, well, what the hell even is SALT? And so we'll start there. It was established by a man that some of you may know this name, Anthony Scaramucci. He's a veteran of wealth management and global finance with about 40 years of experience in the industry. He has also expressed a really keen interest in this subject, UAP, UFOs, etc., and has been proactive in framing it as a pertinent subject for discussion among capital allocators and innovators, which is kind of dangerous in the face of stigma and reputational suicide. So I give him credit for that. David is going to be presenting on non-human intelligence and Earth at the SALT conference in New York City this month. Coming up right here, just a few weeks. It's going to be on the 21st. And as far as I'm aware, he's going to be the first individual with former government ties to address this subject at a global conference of this magnitude. There is significant interest from investors in accessing materials, research, and any potential intellectual property that's associated with this field. The conference itself is designed to facilitate networking among investors, asset managers, and worldwide networks of entrepreneurs. So, and as we said, Gary Nolan presented last year, and that video is sitting at about 619,000 views right now.
That's crazy.
So I'm going to pull up here too this image. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was going to say, because what he said was staggering. I mean, I've never heard anybody say something like he said at that conference. I mean, with absolute
I covered
certainty.
it. We're going to play that clip in a moment here. So now you can see here, this is a screenshot I took from their website that they have a nice little shot here of Mr. Grush. Now, I am seeing both sides of the argument with this. There's one side of the fence that's like, oh, hey, these bastards are trying to milk this for every dollar. And then there's the other side of it where it's an effort to destigmatize the conversation. It's an effort to bring other smart individuals into this that also have deep pockets. So, you know, we're really not going to know what the hell the motives are truly until time passes.
I mean, but
that's just a fact.
I'm looking at it from a point of view of, if there's nothing to this story, if everything is all fake, then why are they looking to invest so much money from such a large investment group? That's what SALT is, just venture capital investments. So are they perfecting some of the technology that they've got? And if that's the case, then doesn't that kind of validate a lot of what these people are saying? I mean, if they're reverse engineering, as David Grush claims, then it would make perfect sense.
You would think so, right? So while keynote speakers are a significant highlight for this event, the principal value of such events often lies in the network opportunities that this fosters, right? Grush's role as a main stage speaker is significant because it has the potential to broaden the audience's awareness of you know, the current state of affairs, so to speak. But like I said, the rationale and ultimate objectives of Grush's presentation, they technically remain ambiguous, especially given his generally reserved stance on other platforms. So one might speculate that this initiative kind of presents a strategic shift to, you know, leverage financial and influential power to establish, you know, maybe like a private sector UFO research program, similar to like Kona Blue, like what we saw with that, which, you know, would involve major institutional players outside of the traditional military industrial complex. I think that's very likely what's going on, because I do believe Grush. I can't say I 100% trust him, because you guys know how my brain operates if you've watched this show before, but I'm in that 90 percentile at least.
Trust but verify.
Yeah, we got to trust. It's trust but verify. That is kind of my mantra at this point. Oh, Fringe. Hello, my friend. It's so lovely to have Fringe here in the chat. We love Fringe. We got to get her back on the show soon, man. Have all types of conversations with her. She's the best. So we're going to play a clip here. This is actually from one of my older YouTube videos. This is a clip of Gary Nolan from last year. at the SALT conference, and Paul had brought this back up to me earlier in the day, a statement that Gary made, which at the time did get some attention, but I feel ultimately it's kind of flown under the radar. It's actually deserved way more attention. So let's have a look at the clip.
Believe that extraterrestrial intelligence has visited planet Earth.
I think you can go a step further. It hasn't just visited, it's been here a long time, and it's still here.
Well, that was fairly straightforward and specific, as many of us in this field of study have believed for quite some time. Dr. Nolan, too, believes that the phenomenon has likely been with us for a very long time, perhaps even from the very beginning. And to take it a step further, they may have been the cause for humans to exist in the first place.
If you had to assign a probability to that statement, that you believe extraterrestrial intelligence has visited this planet, what probability would you assign?
100%. And that's not just my opinion. I mean, look, the National Defense Appropriation Act, passed last year, signed by Biden in December. 30 pages of that is the establishment of an unidentified aerial phenomenon office, the establishment of looking into the harm that's happened to any of a number of the individuals, going back to 1945 and looking at the disinformation and misinformation that has been basically articulated over the decades.
So, 100%, right? Now, 100%. We know who Gary Nolan is. We know what he does. We know his level of intelligence. We know how much money he has. I mean, Paul, really what's the likelihood that someone makes that type of statement, but is full of shit? Like, honestly.
I mean, coming from him, that's a nuke to me. I mean, like, he is one of the most respected scientists and venture capitalists in the world. Like, he's got so many patents. He's at a major university. He is, like, to me, the strongest, I guess, disclosure advocate that we've ever had, maybe. And for him to say something like that is really impressive. And I'm hoping Grush says something like that at this conference. Like, the certainty, I hope the guy asks the exact same question. It would be so nice to hear Grush say 100%, 100%.
You know, now that we know that Grush is going to be making this appearance and doing a presentation at SALT, it's like, I wonder if that has had any role in the delay of the release of his op-ed. Or maybe it'll be, you know, potentially, maybe it'll coincide. Because obviously there's a few different things in play. The potential that there's, you know, the Doppser process. But there's a lot of back and forth on that. There's a lot of nitty gritty that has to be circumnavigated, so to speak. Like, there's a lot of really great people online that stay up to date with all these little ins and outs, and they know that on page 4 of this document, section 7, it states this. It's like, I leave that to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's when you have ADD like I do, like, there's only so much of that you can dig through before it's just like, oh my God, dude, I'm gonna go watch tornado videos. You know what I mean? Like,
you know what I wish would happen?
It's hard.
Like, I wish, I mean, because I have a lot of respect for Grush, and I think he's a great ally to have, but I really wish they would have some sort of conference with, like, Grush, Gary Nolan, even Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, like the people that
maybe
are really
Jason Sands eventually.
Jason Sands, maybe Tim Burchett, like, just have a panel with all those people on there, and just, you know what, go. We're just going to film it. You guys talk amongst yourselves,
and just say whatever you want, right? Like, say
whatever you want.
That would be really cool. It would be nice to also maybe get some of those faces, in another Twitter space, X space, like what Jason did, right? You know, that's essentially, I call it an electronic town hall, is how that is. And you really open yourself up to scrutiny. And again, that's one of the things that did impress me about Jason, was the fact that he really stayed the course in the midst of, I mean, a barrage of questions and criticisms and inquiry. And you know,
I think almost too much. Like, I think that was, I love the fact that he came out in a space just so anybody could ask him questions. But it also opens you up, and I think he got caught up in that. Like it credit to him for the bravery, but it also put some holes in his story that people were kind of throwing at him, which I didn't really care for, because certain people don't have respect. I don't want to bring up any names about that, but we all know who they are. The naysayers.
There's a way to go about it, right?
There's a way to go about it. Yeah.
You can be respectful. And I've said this publicly. I said it a couple times. I thought the way that Stephen Greenstreet handled himself was very respectful. Was impressed by that. There's some people that were in there could have done a little better.
Yeah, there were some. I mean, like, and after the fact, even the backwash of like Lou Reviews was coming in and spouting stuff went out.
And then I talked to him
Rick Doty, and
in
I'm
a later
why?
space.
Just why?
And I had a really decent conversation with Lou Reviews in a space later on that week. He came into a space that Astral was hosting, that I was co-hosting, and I had a really respectful, kind of a fun like dialogue with him. Honestly, like when it's just like a regular conversation, and you kind of take like the passion out of it and such. Like, like I'll be honest, like I didn't find him insufferable. I thought he was a nice guy. Honestly, like just in that moment.
It's what made him popular, for his original podcast, his original views.
I used to watch it.
Yeah, he got burned somewhere along the way, and I get it, but you don't have to set the whole world on fire just because you changed.
I know. Well, you know what it is too. I try to put myself in the shoes of the people that our community sort of piles on, and I don't like getting involved with that because I know that if I woke up every day and had to deal with that, that's really stressful, man. I'm not trying to stress anybody out. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to make anybody feel down on themselves or get depressed or anything like that. Like I said to Lou, I was like, look, at the end of the day, you have your beliefs and I have mine. You and I have come to different conclusions about certain things regarding the UFO subject and other related matters. And that's it.
We just
man.
leave it
like,
at that?
Yeah, no. And that he like I said, it was a pleasure to finally speak to you one-on-one. He agreed. I don't know if he followed me. He may have, but shout out to Lou Reviews just because I really appreciated that. And I'm bringing this up specifically because that's an example of the fact that we can do it. Like we don't have to agree on everything, but we can remain respectful towards one another. And, like we had a little bit of a back and forth regarding like cinema and such. It's like, I love movies, man. I love film and such. And that would be I guarantee you, like if me and him were like on a podcast together, just talking about like movies, it'd be great, honestly, because I'm a movie buff, a film buff, like, and I know he is absolutely bigger than I am even.
Yeah.
So
that's how
again,
started.
He's a human being. I'm a human being. Stephen Greenstreet's a human being. Mick West is a human being. I don't hate anybody. I bring this up a lot because it's like, for the love of God, I hope it just rubs off on somebody, honestly, because we just get more done. There's more progress to be made, right? Like if a UFO video gets posted and it's bunk, I expect one of them to call that out. Right? Like,
for sure.
If I post something and it gets debunked and one of them properly debunks it, and that's the case, we're on to the next one. It's not the end of the world,
Let's
right?
move on. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
But
that's
you
absolutely
you don't have to suffer for that. Like, so like, let's say you saw a video and you liked it and they debunk it. They don't have to torture you now because you saw something and
I agree with that take. I absolutely agree with that take. No, you don't have to bash somebody. It's just not necessary.
That's what they need to stop doing, I think, sometimes, and like making fun of it, I guess, because it's taken a long time for this subject to get any respect whatsoever. So just leave it, let it go, let it be there, let it have its respect, and let people talk about it.
Live and let live, right?
For for sure.
Shout out to everybody on the opposite side of this debate.
Absolutely. Yeah, even that dream panel, like if we had, the Mellon and the Elizondo and Grush and everybody, if we had the counter argument and have them all talk, I think that'd be
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
It's got to benefit the public at the end of the day, right? Like,
all we want is the
if
truth.
one of those individuals has a gripe, I would love to see the specific individual that refers to respond in kind. That's what we want. Like I remember years ago watching, and I'm not trying to steer this in a different direction, but I remember watching I forget his name. He had done a very famous interview with Michael Jackson at one point, Indian Man. He's a journalist, highly respected. I think he's from Great Britain. He hosted a debate that was based on Christianity versus like atheism, excuse me. And it was Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort, and then two other individuals that came. They were from like the Organization for Reason, or I forget what it was called. And it was a courteous, respectful dialogue. Everybody shook hands. Everybody clapped for one another. And I'm like,
that's all it takes.
That's all. You can have a debate and you can have a dialogue with people and be cool. Right. Yeah. Like, it's like, look, is it the end of the world for me that I've had my own experiences, but there is someone out there that doesn't believe that happened? No. Yeah. Because I recognize that I can't prove it to them. And their requirement for evidence, I am not able to fulfill what they have set as that requirement. So I respectfully understand that for me, at least what happened to me, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to be able to do that. And that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. And they're never going to change my mind. And they probably recognize that. I can't take my experiences and put them in a box and then ship them to you to look at. That's not how this works. And we're also potentially dealing, and I've been saying this a lot lately, and I want it to really sink in. We're potentially dealing with a phenomenon that may have the wicked ability to evade the standard scientific method. And it's like, well, how is that possible? Well, there's a lot of ways that could be possible. So I'll give you guys an example. Jacques Vallée's research is definitely part of this, and my stance on this is very influenced by that school of thought, along with John Keel, like the idea of the super spectrum. So my next YouTube video, and yes, it's almost done. I've been working on it for a while, but this week was crazy. It's almost done, I promise.
You said that last week.
Yeah, I did actually. No, that is true. You got me there. We can play the clip. And also, shout out to everybody that's here in the chat, because I see some hands waving and hellos. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Obviously, we deeply, deeply appreciate you being here. Otherwise, we'd be talking to ourselves, which we would probably still do that anyways. But my next video talks about consciousness non-locality, right? So I thought about it. And it's like, okay, we have the potential for the human conscious experience, the mind, to come from outside of ourselves. And I lean in that direction very heavily, that we are connected to a consciousness field of some kind that resides outside of our standard understanding of the third dimension. Like we're in, I always like to say, like, we're in a snow globe. But we're also the tendrils. We're the tentacles of this consciousness cloud, and we're hooked up to it. So we're actually able to receive information from outside of the third dimension, and we don't know what the rules are there. They might be quite different, which would then thus explain things like terminal lucidity and precog and remote viewing and such, right? So keep that in mind. If these NHI are vastly superior to us in every way, shape, and form, technologically, maybe even spiritually. Is it possible that they are essentially hacking into our perception, right? Picture it like this. I'm just going to use some objects, right? Here's the consciousness field. It's another dimension of some kind, right? Now, this pen here is me, human being, okay? We have an invisible connection to this. All right, so just imagine there being a long, beautiful wire that runs to this person down here, okay? Is it possible that these NHI are actually able to enter that connection? It would be like if you had a computer hooked up to a TV monitor and I jacked into that signal, or I found some weird way of entering that wire physically, even potentially. That's kind of what I think is going on.
Or it's like
I think it explains a lot. Right. Yeah, I think it explains a lot, though. There's cases where people see an object, they're both looking at it, but it looks like two different things. Like Paul and I could be out on a hillside in Albania, and we could see, I see a flying saucer, he sees it too, but I'm like, dude, there's a black flying saucer, and he's like, yeah, but it's white. There's cases like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, perspective.
Barry Nolan had talked about one from France that happened. They were driving in a car. I think they even took photos of the object, and they're like, this is weird. The object that we saw looks totally different in the photograph now. How do you explain that? Well, I think this may be part of it.
It may be. It definitely may be. Yeah, in the consciousness aspect of it, which is really coming to the forefront lately. Like a lot of people are really adding that into the conversation because it comes up so much within a lot of the whistleblowers, like David Grush, Jason Sands recently, who talks about the consciousness aspect of it. But perspective and consciousness, and I asked Astral, our good friend, that question the other day. What is consciousness, and is it local or non-local? And when he said both, I was like, I wasn't expecting that answer. I was like,
it's a good answer.
But it really is, because it doesn't have to be one or the other, and we could be in two different realms at the same time, which we kind of really are. Like every time, arguably, I guess every time you say a prayer, you're lifting your consciousness to a different level. So it's really, really an interesting subject, and the fact that it comes up in almost every UAP conversation, it lends a lot of credibility to it.
I think it's fascinating. I might be, as far as all of these interconnected topics are concerned, this might be the most damn interesting part of it all, is 100%. The consciousness section of it. I'm
super looking forward to your documentary, buddy. If it's anything as good as your last one.
I can only hope that people enjoy it, as much as I enjoy making it.
I'm a fan, buddy. I am a fan.
It's funny you call it a documentary too, and it's like I actually never called any of these things that. I'm just like, it's just a long video that I made about a thing.
Yeah, that's really what they are. Yeah, I mean, there's not much difference between what you and James Fox does. I mean,
I will tell you guys.
You do it great.
I have a call later today with a name that you guys may be very familiar with. I think I'm allowed to talk about this. I don't know how much of it I can say. But if you guys know the work of documentarian Darcy Weir, he and I have something brewing in the background, so to speak, is what I'll say, that we want to try to put together. Darcy has amazing documentaries that you can find on Amazon Prime. Secret Space UFOs, if you've ever come across that, that's him. And it's funny how we met, too. I was at work one day watching the one about the Apollo program, and I'm like, damn, this is good. This is so good. There's stuff in here I've never seen before, which always grabs my attention. And then I went into a space on X later that night, and this gentleman, Darcy, was talking, and I saw his default picture was the cover for Secret Space UFOs, and I'm like, look, I'm reading his profile, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is the guy who made that. I was like, hey, Darcy. I was like, not for anything. I was like, I just watched your documentary during my lunch break earlier, man. Like, I was like, that was great. And we've been friends ever since. He's a great guy, man. He's great. So we have a little bit of a project brewing in the background that we're going to try to put together. I may end up narrating it. So it's, again, it's just, it's fun to have discussions about these subjects. And then again, it's not a grift making content about it. It's like, I genuinely enjoy creating like a presentation to share with open-minded people and then ask them like what they felt about it. What did you get out of that? Like same thing with any of my YouTube videos, right? It's like, I'm going to make something that it's about a topic that I find really interesting enough that I'm going to sit here for hours and make a video about it. I'm going to put it out in the world, and then it creates conversation. It makes people think. It's good exercise for the brain. It's good for us human beings, being that we're social creatures, right? So that's why I don't hate on anybody that, especially doing what I do, right? Because I know there's a couple people that are like, oh, dude, you just want to make money. It's like, if that was the case, there's a million other methodologies that I could employ on YouTube where I could totally sell myself out. Like these people that make those wacky videos where they're like, Michael Jackson called me at midnight, not clickbait, right? Like some bullshit. Like it's so obviously crap. Yeah. I could have easily just made stuff like that. No, I am passionate about this. I have had experiences, and I think I was meant in some weird way to do this, right? It's like, oh wow, I love playing guitar. I love writing music and playing music. I love to paint. I love to create art. I love to mess with audio. I'm fascinated by photography. It's like, oh shit, here's this thing where I can literally combine all of the things that I like doing that I think I'm decent at into one world. And that's what this is.
Of synchronicity, if you think about, we have 3 people from all over the world. We live multiple time zones apart, and to come together for one show, like it just all happened. Like it's really, really cool. Like
it is, man. I mean, I love you and Digby. I love everybody here in the chat. You know what I mean? It's been such a good experience. I got to be honest. Like ever since my last relationship, didn't work out the way that I had planned, unfortunately, and that's okay. That's part of life. If it weren't for this show and the community, I would be a really, really lonely person, because it's like I just haven't even had the time to like go out and try to meet people and such. And the things that I run into all the time, like that girl that reached out to me. We spoke that day, and we're talking, and I haven't heard from her since. She just suddenly stopped speaking to me, and I can't control what other people do, but it's like when you get ghosted, though, that shit hurts, man. Like it leaves you asking a lot of questions about your self-worth, your appearance, and things. But this time, for the first time in my life, I was just like, I'm not the only one that this has happened to. I kind of feel like I have the moral high ground, right? It's ridiculous. It's like, I'm not someone that handles things that way. It's like if I go out on a date and I'm just not feeling it, I'm going to be as friendly and as honest as I can about that. I'd be like, listen, I don't know if we're compatible, and it hurts, but it's like, at least you're telling that person the truth, and you're not leaving them with so many unanswered questions that it eventually like wrecks their self-esteem, right? Like that
one
can
day
happen.
I'll get you to Albania, and we'll fix all that for you, buddy.
The women over there are
stunning.
They are a sight for sore eyes, my friend. They are absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I think I'm just probably going to end up
in Albania
with someone in the UFO community at the end of the day, right? Like to match my weirdness and craziness. I'm not that crazy though. I don't think I am, at least. But there really are people that see us out here and the people in the chat talking about what we're talking about, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is cult." Oh god, I'm like, "No, come on, dude." I'm like, "Yes, some people take it to that extent, absolutely." I'm not going to get specific, but it gets a little wild. But no, at the end of the day, it's mostly comprised of open-minded people and also people that have had experiences where they're like, dude, I don't know what the fuck happened to me. And the only thing that seems to make sense to answer any of my questions is this. And what are they supposed to do about that? That's not their fault. They didn't ask for it. I know people who have had experiences that if they could go back in time, they don't want any part of this. They didn't want to be, you know, an
Most of them
abductee.
don't. Yeah. Just ask friends if you have any questions about that.
Lori says, I had no idea what being ghosted was until I dated after 10 years of being single. Still waiting on the second date. Yeah, it's like, don't. A piece of advice, don't do that to people. It's not right. It's very disrespectful. Just be an adult. It's like, look, if you think I'm fucking weird or something, and or like you don't like my eyebrows or whatever, it's like, just say it and get on with your life. So, our next news story before we go off on like the most ridiculous tangent about relationship advice.
This is a great clip. I love this clip.
Dude. So Paul sent me this while I was at work the other day. And I'm like, okay, what is this about to be? Now, I want to, just out of respect, especially because this individual's channel is new. I'm actually going to their channel now because I want to make sure that I get all of the information right. We followed each other on Twitter or X, and he had a gentleman on this podcast. It appears to be relatively new, and the gentleman that's on the show, he made a claim that really grabbed my attention. The implications are quite startling. I want to also preface this by saying that we do not mean to offend anybody by sharing this.
It's just the Indiana Jones in each of us that wants to know this stuff.
It's people have very strongly held creeds, right? Like religion is very powerful. And I don't want anybody to take anything that we're about to talk about the wrong way. Again, coming from the perspective of I am what I would call a spiritual agnostic, right? I don't have all the answers, but I believe that there is a soul, and I'm trying to figure everything out, okay? So this man's name, I believe, is pronounced Matt Beal. The show is called Matt Beal Limitless. He is a free-thinking CEO and podcaster on an open-minded exploration of a wide variety of topics. I love this show already. He has 15 episodes up. He's going to be pushing about 4,000 subscribers. So it's like, you know, kind of like the beginning of the road here. I'd love to get him on the show and have a conversation. He seems like a really intelligent guy. This man he had on his show, his name is Timothy Hogan, and he is what is known as a Grand Master, I believe, of the Knights Templar. I'm going to play this clip, and then we'll discuss, because it really does speak for itself.
I am currently the Grand Master of the Knights Templar.
And there are about 3 million people with that 3 million Knights Templars
worldwide. Yeah.
Worldwide, yeah.
Right.
What was the situation like then between the Templar and the Roman Catholic Church?
Well, it was not great.
Yeah.
And it was understood that things would be turned over to the Pope, including information and that type of thing. And but they weren't turning everything over. And when the Roman Church figured that out, then all of a sudden the Templar Order became a threat.
Time to burn.
The order was created really as a means to go in and all that and to help secure
the artifacts
and get them out of there. Well, we know that there were several arks. I mean, most people think of the Ark of the Covenant, but we know there were several. There could have been hundreds of them. We have in our possession 6 of them right now. that we had secured, mostly in areas between Jerusalem and Egypt, and then we, brought them over here to the Americas at a very early stage.
Pre-Columbus.
Pre-Columbus, yeah.
You were traveling to the Americas.
Correct, yeah.
So you have the bones of Jesus Christ, Mary Magdalene, John the Baptist, and their combined children.
Correct.
And how many children are there?
Well, there's 4 total. Our hope is to release this stuff. They can undergo DNA testing. There's indication that the figure, who was Mary Magdalene, had been married and had children with both John the Baptist and with Jesus. And these bones were pointing to that idea, agreeing with that idea.
So describe the bones. Are there any odd features? Are there, what are the how do you describe them?
They do have some odd features to them, including the skulls have somewhat conical types of heads, and which has indicated to some degree that they could be, by some interpretations, somewhat extraterrestrial in origin.
Boy, that's loaded. Paul, you're the one who sent me the clip.
Yeah,
I did watch the whole interview. I'm going to post the link in the chat for everybody to go watch after our show is over, hopefully. Because listen, it is fascinating.
It is.
Shout out to Matt. I first of all, I love the set design. By the way, that couch, it gives me Matrix vibes. Sort of like the chairs that Neo and Morpheus were sitting in, but it's like a long couch, and how it's got that cutaway that shows his logo. That's really cool set design. I think the show is going to be a hit, and I think it should.
Quality. If he keeps
so let's start off with this.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, man.
A lot. So I guess we'll start with this. Do you believe him? Do you believe the man and the claims that he's making?
The history of the Knights Templar and Freemasons, and there's so much out there, and they tie a lot of these things together. The Rosicrucians, everybody, they all kind of come from the same vein. Now, which one's older? They say the Freemasons were the original ones. Some of them became the Knights Templar. The Y-Files actually has a really good episode of the Knights Templar that's got really accurate information too. So highly recommend watching that one. But it's such a deep rabbit hole, and the claims that they make are, man, if 10% of them are true, then it's like earth-shattering kind of level of information. I've seen that guy before, interviewed before, and there are some people there's some people that take him very seriously. He's very well known in the Knights Templar orders. Now, it's difficult because I'm a huge fan of like Graham Hancock. Like when he went on his quest for the Ark, he wrote a book called The Sign of the Seal. About his quest for the Ark of the Covenant, and he had none of this of what this guy's talking about. So, is he telling the truth? I'm not sure. I really just don't know. But if he is, then wow.
So I'll say what's kind of interesting about the way he presents the information is the fact that he seems very nonchalant about it, right?
Kind of matter of fact, yeah.
Yeah, so that grabs my attention. Now, he was also saying that the Templar Order wants to get this out into the world, and then have a situation where these bones and these artifacts can be studied by the scientific community. So, Sandy, that's a great question, right? Why would a Grand Master divulge their secrets? Well, if he's telling the truth, it would line up with this idea that they feel that the world is on the verge of being ready to accept this information. It's the same thing with disclosure. It's like the ontological shock aspect of it. He makes a really, really valid point in saying that the reason that they have kept it secret is because you are going to uproot strongly held beliefs that billions of people carry, like literally, like hundreds of millions, if not billions of people, you're going to potentially put people into a situation where they are going to have a crisis of faith, right? They're going to question their
Well,
longly held beliefs.
in that vein, there's another theory that certain people are trying to orchestrate the comeuppance of the Antichrist and the end times kind of vibe. So a lot of misinformation, disinformation to confuse the general public, to stray everybody as far away from their central core beliefs as possible. So that's another log of the fire. So
sociopathic strangeness is
it's
afoot.
very, very bizarre. Yeah.
So we don't talk about Jesus Christ a lot on this show because obviously we do dive into the connection between religion and UFOs and such, but the mention of Jesus, the remains being sort of odd, the skull and such, right? It's always made me wonder. It's like, was Jesus Christ some sort of social experiment being carried out by NHI, right? And again, I mean, no offense, I'm just asking questions here, right? Because I know some people that if you even say that man's name in the wrong way in front of them, like my boss at work, devout Christian, nothing wrong with that, okay? But this is an open-minded program that you're watching. I'm going to be very clear about my feelings here, okay? There is only one thing that makes me even scratch my head when it comes to the idea of the resurrection, okay? Now, I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, while at the same time, I'm sure some of you are not. There is an artifact called the Shroud of Turin that many believe to be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. That's this right here. So we'll zoom in on that so you guys can see that a little better. Okay. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a part of the research team. But there was a lot of experimentation and studying that was done on the subject. And as far as I know, one of the groups said that, because they were essentially trying to figure out why and how this image got onto this cloth in the way that it did. It's not simple. It's not.
The how is the most interesting part, in my opinion.
Very interesting because it's not merely the result of, dirt residue and blood and such. No, apparently that is not the case. It's interesting. One of the scientists called it almost like an accidental photograph. And it's like, well, okay, how does that work? So they said that, and this is one of the groups, again, I can't confirm this to be true. Like I said, I'm not part of the group. I'm not a scientist. I'm telling you what these people said. They said that the only way that the image on this cloth could get there in the way that it's there is if there was, and I quote, a large burst of gamma radiation that occurred underneath the cloth. And the reason they're saying that is because essentially what you have here is a front and back image. And it's like, well, what does that mean? There are portions, like you can take this image apparently and actually create like a three-dimensional image from that, right? It's like, well, how does that work if a person is laying on their back and covered with a cloth? Like, how are you able to see any portion of the back, anything like that? And it's like, okay, this burst of gamma radiation. Well, what is gamma radiation? Gamma radiation is light, essentially, in this situation.
Yeah, it's probably the light spectrum.
So break it down, right? They are claiming that this cloth has an image on it of Jesus Christ because there was a burst of light underneath the cloth.
Mm-hmm.
It's
mind blowing.
Again, I don't know if that's true. What I do know is true, though, is that they are having an incredibly tough time trying to figure out how this image got onto this cloth, which in itself is very strange.
Yeah.
And if that's true,
yeah, they even tried to attribute it to like genius artists like Da Vinci and stuff, but they're like, no, he never had anything like this. And
that's been pretty deeply debunked at this point. That was a theory for a very long time.
And if you look at the image, if you put light behind something and you shoot light through it, it's going to go through the body in different resistance rates. And when it's projecting itself on this cloth, it looks like that's how you get that 3D depth perception on this image. So it's really remarkable.
It is actually. So it's like, well, if I asked, a Christian or anybody really to describe to me like what if the resurrection happened, right? It's like, well, what do you think that would have looked like? I think a lot of people would say that there was like, a burst of light, the Holy Spirit and such.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Starbuck in the chat. That is a great point there. Like a Xerox copy. You are absolutely correct. That's what these scientists are positing about this image.
Yeah.
It is the one thing that makes me go, whoa, hold up. What is this? But then it makes you wonder about the nature of Jesus, right? It's like, well, take the Bible out of the equation for a second here, okay? Let's just be really blunt and simple. You have a being in a human form that dies. They throw a cloth over the being. There's a burst of light. This image shows up, and now this being is alive again? How? Right? It's like, I can't do that. Paul can't do that, as far as I know. So what was it about Jesus that gave him the ability to do this and made him special in that way? And if this lines up with, if there's any truth in what that gentleman was talking about, as far as the Knights Templar, I'll just say it. Maybe Jesus was an HI of some kind that was brought down here for a reason. I don't know. I'm speculating. I'm saying it's a theory. I'm not even saying I even believe it. I am speculating. I don't know. I wasn't around that time. But what I do know is that this image is weird. The Bible, the translations, it's become a game of telephone at this point. And I do know for a fact that Jesus has had quite the staying power throughout history. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
And not only that, I mean, he's brought up in a lot of conversations with people, like Tom DeLonge brings him up all the time, saying, during abduction cases, and I think actually Fringe, brought this up as well in one of our conversations. Sometimes people get an abduction process, they call out the name of Jesus, and the abduction just completely stops. So it's one of two things.
Times.
Yeah, it's one of two things. Either it's a much more spiritual battle than we realize, or the other side would be if it's fully NHI and fully alien, then why does that name have power over the situation that you're in? Or is it completely mental? Like, is it just because in your mind you think Jesus is saving you, and it just clears up the
Is it intention? Is it like the power of intention?
It's a strange thing. So
now, if you guys after the show want to check out that interview that Matt did with Timothy Hogan, the link is now in the chat. Shout out to Matt. Again, I wanted to really point a spotlight not only for the fact that I'm using a clip from his show, the fact that I love it. Again, if I don't have any issue with somebody taking a clip from this show as long as they don't edit it and make us look like we're saying something that we're not, right? Like that's our content is free to use wherever, as long as you're not claiming ownership over it. Obviously, I'm not here. And I want to have a conversation with Matt and maybe eventually get in touch with Mr. Hogan myself, because I think he would be a really interesting guest to have on this show, because I have questions myself. It's the first time in my life where I'm watching the show and I'm like, wow, I could actually just like join the Knights Templar. Because I'll be honest, a lot of what they believe and adhere to, like it resonated with me, a lot of it. I gotta be honest. You know, the original doctrine, you know, the freedom of religion and such. It's crazy how I didn't realize how much of an influence the Knights Templar had on like the Constitution of the United States. Like seriously, like some of my deeply long-held beliefs as far as society is concerned appears to potentially have some origins with the Knights Templar. The, you know,
especially if you tie it,
the religions,
if you tie it to the
belief.
Freemasons. Yeah, if you tie it to the Freemasons, then you could say that because almost everybody that signed the Constitution was a Freemason as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, people hear Freemason, they think Illuminati, and I get there's a darker side to this, but there's different sects, right? Just like one of my sources, you know, if you guys go and watch my video about the Secret Keepers, the Fears of the Secret Keepers video that I did, there are like little packets, little groups that have broken off from, like, for example, like the Collins Elite, right? And they carry with them some of the foundational beliefs, and then some of those ideas begin to morph and they get reshaped by the people that are involved with this. It influences the people underneath them. Next thing you know, you have a group that's very different than its origin point. But this is just so fascinating. I mean, the implications of this are quite startling. I don't know if again, I don't know if he's telling the truth. I don't, but it's strange how he's talking about it, and it makes me go. He sounds like he's like the way he's verbalizing things, the facial expressions, the cues, and all that. He doesn't sound like he's full of it. But then you pair that with the information, you're just like, whoa, what are you saying now? Yeah, Fringe makes a really good point. The top ufologists apparently are Freemasons, Rosicrucians, no TO. Yeah, that's Danny Sheehan, right? Like, I think Jacques Vallée is a Rosicrucian, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Sheehan, Vallée, John Keel was even, I believe, dealing with a lot of the occult as parts of that.
It's fascinating. There's definitely a connection. We were talking about this before the show. You and
we were just talking about
lately.
Yeah, this whole week for me has been a lot of occult studies on this kind of stuff and how it connects.
And to be clear, as a now, at this point, a somewhat known is oh shit. You know what just happened, Paul? My phone. I told you this was gonna happen. All right, so here, I'll
You go to the Logitech, buddy.
Yeah, I'm just gonna switch cameras real quick. Shit happens, and what are you gonna do?
While you're doing that, why don't you pull up that Roswell document?
Yeah. We'll throw that up on the screen while I'm doing this. Let me just. I'm gonna hook up the camera real quick because I'm gonna have to make sure I have to size the green screen correctly and all that. Or I may, if it doesn't look right within like a minute, I'm literally just gonna pull the green screen down and then just be like in my room. But
that's cool.
In the meantime here, look at that. See, I'm gonna take myself off. That's a beautiful look, isn't it? That's a beautiful, beautiful look. That is so bad.
I love Fringe's input.
Now, I just switched to camo. It's actually picking up the other camera. All right, so we'll go to OBS virtual. How is it doing that? That's so crazy. All right, that's really odd.
Take care, Skinny Bob. Thanks for dropping by, buddy.
So yeah, actually, we'll use this as an opportunity really quick to do a couple plugs. Not sure if you guys knew.
Just me today. All right. That's the beauty of doing the
my
show
name's
live.
Timothy Hogan.
Everybody take off.
Paul, can you hear me?
So before he pulls up the Roswell document,
Yeah.
we want to give some context. Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Just making sure that was most important here.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
No, I'm just saying, just to give some context regarding the document itself. It's recently regained, I guess I should say regained, because it's been out before, a lot of new attention. It's not a formal memo, but rather a newsletter authored by Mead Lane, I think is how you pronounce her name.
I believe so.
Titled The Round Robin. With his, let's see, yeah,
it was like a news. It was like a little newsletter type deal.
Yeah, redacted. Yeah, the address is redacted at the top, but it found its way into the FBI archives, likely because of public frequency submitted to non-government material to assist J. Edgar Hoover and his team monitoring various issues. So this is a legitimate government document. It was FOIA'd. Oh, there it is. Thanks for putting it up. But the content is what is interesting, and it's almost like this thing could have been written 2 weeks ago. That's how pertinent it really is. It's one of the earliest mentionings of interdimensional explanation for UFOs. So very early on, and I think this is before John Keel was kind of bringing up that thought, and maybe some of the Forteans would be previous to that, like Charles Fort. But this is one of the most, I guess the earliest in government documentation, maybe. And it coincided with the Roswell incident on July 8th, 1947, the date of this infamous and legendary UFO crash in New Mexico.
It's really interesting. It just, we wanted to also provide some clarity here for the fact that some people thought this was like some sort of like internal FBI memo, so to speak, which isn't the case, right? Like it was apparently submitted. But what's really interesting about the document itself is the information and how it very much lines up with a lot of the ideas that we see in modern ufology, right? So this would likely be, and again, I can't confirm this, excuse me, it was put out that it was the very first. I don't believe that to be true, but it's one of the earliest mentionings of the interdimensional explanation for UFOs. And obviously, interestingly, it coincides with the Roswell incident. You see the date there, July 8th, 1947. We all know that date. It's very infamous for the legendary UFO crash in New Mexico. So, the FBI's vault is home to thousands of classified documents concerning various historical mysteries, with UFOs and NHI being a predominant theme. And among these, the Memorandum of Importance, or Memo 6751, has been deemed critical by many ufologists, specifically FBI Special Agent John D'Souza. I'm sure some of you have seen some of the interviews that Mr. D'Souza has been a part of. I read his book. It's really interesting stuff. So the complexity surrounding this document suggests more than mere opportunism, though. They hint at a profound and possibly intriguing narrative that was set in 47. Despite Edgar Hoover's conservative stance, in 2010, it was revealed that the FBI declassified a report from July of 47 by a special agent, a lieutenant colonel, detailing an interview with a UFO witness, which was initially suppressed for national security reasons. Memo 6751 acknowledges some sort of alien presence, supporting the notion that we are visited by beings not only from other planets, but also from other dimensions, specifically from the etheric plane, materializing at certain points as, quote, translucent giants. This memo reinforces the foundation of the interdimensional hypothesis for UFO origins, and interestingly, obviously, aligns with those events on July 8th of 1947, what happened in Roswell. The timing is really spectacular here, because it's like, it's literally the same day. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's happenstance, coincidence. I'm not sure.
Well, when you tie it in with what else was happening at that time too, because
Mhm.
recently we kind of learned that I think Ross Coulthard had put it out just recently too, that they've proven that the 1933 crash in Italy was in fact true, and David Grush had referenced that. So if you start in 33 and it spills into World War II, then 47, of course, with the Roswell incident, then it kind of all ties together. But to me, like you said, the interesting thing about this is it's the first mention of interdimensional capabilities versus just men from Venus and Mars is what they were thinking at the time.
Right,
for the
right,
most
right.
part. So that hypothesis may have been determined back from the 33 crash, because in 1945, the 44 or 45, the U.S. confiscated the crash from Italy after the war was over, and Italy was defeated with the Axis powers. So it's definitely got a lot of history behind it, and it's just kind of another validation for everything we're kind of exploring here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I feel like this particular hypothesis about some of the origins of NHI in general, I feel like the interdimensional hypothesis makes a lot of sense. And again, maybe that's the wrong term to use, right? Maybe we'll down the line have a different way of saying that. But for lack of a better term, it's this idea that these beings are not merely arriving here from a distant star system, but they're actually coming from a different construct, so to speak, in the universe.
Mhm.
Something that we can't necessarily access by just simply jumping in a rocket, setting coordinates, and then zooming off into outer space. It is something that is far away and close at the same time, in a sense. I feel, based on the entire sum of my research that I've done in my life with these subjects, I feel like this is what I land on the most. This is it right here.
It validates a lot of what the possibility. I mean, everybody complains about if they're coming from another planet, it would take them 300 years to get here, things like that. First off, we could say that they've been coming here for a long, long, long time, as a lot of evidence to suggest that. Secondly, the interdimensional hypothesis, eliminates a lot of the science. Now, one of the things that Eric Weinstein said, he goes, "I don't know what interdimensional means. When you tell me that, it's meaningless to me."
Right.
Which I kind of agree with
I
him
respect
on,
that. No, he's right.
Yeah,
though,
for sure.
In a lot of
sure.
ways. No, I do respect that. I do. So that's why I always sum it up with, it's a different construct.
Mhm.
It's a different construct in the universe that it's layered on top, like an onion, so to speak. Like it's an inward dimension, right? So if we add a fourth dimension, what would that look like to a human eye, right? Like, let's go. I'm sure you guys have heard of flatland, right? So like if we dumb this down and start with 1D and then move up, if I draw an individual, a little stick figure guy on a piece of paper, and I add a box, right? And it's a vault for him, and I put gold in there. He can't get into it, but here I am in the third dimension, and I just reach in and take it, right? So now add that on top of our dimension. They're able to just come in, pop in.
I can't even mentally wrap my head around the fourth dimension. It's so weird. Even when people try, I've watched so many videos explaining dimensional reality, and there's other scientists that claim there's 11 dimensions, and I'm thinking, my
It's
goodness,
nuts.
yeah, how do you even begin to conceive of that? It's just absolutely insane. Even
It's
the
kind
best
of crazy.
fourth dimension ones are hard for me to understand. And I guess
It's
because we're
challenging.
so-
There's
yeah.
it's challenging because the way that we are, the way our brains are wired, so to speak, right? We're only wired to be able to perceive up to the third dimension, but there's this weird ability that we have where we're actually able to speculate about going further, which is interesting, right? Like, because think about the difference in intelligence between like ants and humans, right? We pass by ants all the time. If I'm driving in my car, or let's say I'm out in my yard and there's like an ant hill down there, I know what that is. I know about ants. I know what they're doing. I know, they're these little bugs that sometimes they can carry things that may be very light to me, but to them, it's actually extraordinary. They're very strong for their size, and they're able to move objects that are much larger than themselves, and they're fascinating creatures at the end of the day, right? For anybody that's ever owned an ant farm. I never did, but I know some people that did. It's really interesting stuff. So
had that and sea monkeys.
We know, sea monkeys. I remember sea monkeys. We know that about ants. Now, let's become the ants for a minute. They see us all the time, driving by, walking through the yard and such. And how much do they know about what we are and what we're doing? They probably don't understand any of it. We may actually be like a force of nature to them, right? Like, oh, here comes the giant object that creates the wind. And I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. I would imagine they probably, this document you were showing about beings from different dimensions was shown to me in my regression. The astral realm is what we call it in our language. Yeah. Like, so the astral is an interesting aspect of all of this, right? Like, that's what I imagine as like a different construct. It's like, well, I'm able to access that by astral projection, leaving my body, that type of thing. And it's like, well, perhaps these beings come from there, right? Like whatever that place is. It's just we don't have a good grasp on where that is, from the perspective of locality.
And by definition, does that mean it's spiritual?
Right. Does it? I don't know.
It's a great.
I don't know.
See,
Maybe,
talking a lot, like
is.
talking to friends a lot about this stuff. That's I can safely say, I think, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, friends, but that is her viewpoint on this. It's a heavily spiritual, which is super fascinating to me. I mean, because if you redefine dimensionality into spirituality, it becomes so much easier to understand for some reason.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure why.
You're absolutely right about that. It makes a lot of sense when you talk about it from that perspective. Like, it's like, well, then you got to think too. It's like, what does spiritual mean then? Right? Like, what does that actually represent? Is that outside the body? Is that interdimensional? Like,
French says
Paul,
yes.
like,
and it's important to know that this is from French, that I do not think that in the beginning I arrived. I can't see the rest of that. The little icon's blocking it. I arrived. Oh, I arrived there. Oh no, I was reading from French.
Okay, gotcha.
But she's validating in the chat that is her opinion as well. And but I find it much easier to digest and much easier to communicate with people about it on that level for some reason.
Right,
and
right.
Because when it goes purely scientific in the quantum realm and such, I get that they need that for quote unquote proof, however you define proof. But it's also going to be much more difficult. And maybe that's why in history that has been reduced to just a kind of a spiritual thing is because we don't have the language or the mental capacity to conceive of 11 dimensions in any respect at all.
Right.
So maybe this is the easiest way for us to digest it and understand it and be able to communicate it to one another.
And this is where I have a problem with some of mainstream academia. This is where I have an issue. And the issue is that because we can't conceive of it, and there's that like lack of perception, so to speak, our ability to define these things, and and to be able to create like a theorem for it and such. All of a sudden, it becomes, oh, that doesn't exist. And it's like, well, wait a second, wait a second. What do you mean? Like, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just we don't have a clear understanding of what that is. And I don't know if we'll ever get there. Maybe our biological limitations will prevent that. Maybe AI and a potential transhumanistic merger, so to speak, would open up some of those doorways, right? Like there was a guy back in the 2010s. It's so funny it's saying that like it's an ancient history, but back in the 2010s, back in my day, there was a guy who got an implant that allowed him. He was, I believe, colorblind, like badly, and he got this implant in the back of his head, like by his brainstem. Yeah, where his head, where the neck meets the head, and it gave him the ability to basically like hear colors, almost like a synesthesia type situation. Yeah. But for us, that's like wacky, right? It's like, oh my God, I look here and I hear red, but he got used to it. But what that allowed was for him to hear gamma and infrared and colors that we essentially can't see with the way our eyes are biologically designed. But he was able to hear them essentially. I have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
It reminds me of the story of the guy. He had, I can't remember his name. I think it's from England. He had Asperger's syndrome, and he has synesthesia, and he was reciting the pi number to, I can't remember how many digits. He set the world record. He learned Icelandic in a week, and it's a notoriously complicated language. Yeah, the guy was just brilliant, and he was fully conversational. But when he was talking about how he sees, or how he could like remember all those numbers for pi, I want to say it was thousands of digits. I can't remember how far I went.
Oh goodness.
He said that he associated each with a color, and as he's going through it in his mind, he could see the color, and he knew the number for the color, and he would just repeat the number. He'd see the color, repeat the number, and that way he just kept going on and on and on and on and on. And I thought that was just like unbelievably fascinating. By the way, the chat is on fire, man. These guys, I love these guys so much. And so French said, I started believing these things were from outer space, other planets. I ended with them being from right here in a parallel realm. Lori says the spirit realm is just one of the dimensions. And Terrence is like, it's definitely a mix of a lot of things we just don't understand yet. I'm with you, Terrence. It's crazy.
Truth be told, that is exactly what this is.
Welcome back to the image world, buddy.
Yeah, man. It's funny. Right before we started the show, I was like, I got my phone hooked up as my camera, but it's not quite charging it. And I'm like, well, hopefully it'll last. And I kind of forgot about it, and then it died. So now everybody sees through the matrix that I create with that green screen. But at the end of the day, it's not so much about looking at my stunningly handsome face. It's about the information that we're discussing.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty good here. So obviously we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I meant to mention this earlier, and this is actually, I think, right when my camera went on the fritz. Our channel was recently monetized, the podcast. So that's amazing. And then we went through the process. YouTube checks out your content and such. So we do now, just shamelessly letting you guys know that we now have super chats and all of that available. It's a good way to support the show. It is not a requirement. If you don't do it, I'm not going to judge. It's all good. It's just if that's how you feel like showing your support and saying thank you, or however you would like to go about that type of thing for enjoying what we do here, that option is now available to you. Just letting you know. It helps. It really does.
So that
you
means
know,
subscribe and like the channel. That's the biggest thing. Everybody in Twitter,
that's a
come over
big
to
thing.
YouTube,
Yes,
subscribe and like the channel. Yeah.
from YouTube, and people have really been seeing that, and they are clearly paying attention because we were able to break through that 1,000 subscriber mark here. Now, it's interesting because my YouTube channel is pushing 7,000 subscribers, which is absolutely unreal. So I just, my goal is always to try to get it as close to where my channel is at. And, you know, again, it's like the more the merrier. That's the way I look at it. And at the end of the day, financially supporting people that you enjoy their shows and their content and such, it's not a grift. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not. Like, it would be different if I was coming on the show and was like, oh, hey, guys, my name's Tom, and I am actually, you know, a reptilian from the Sondar galaxy. And then you guys were, you know, sending super chats every week as I feed you
It's
a bunch
all
of
real.
fucking nonsense.
Yeah.
We deal with a lot of speculation on this show. We deal with news that pops up, and then we discuss it. We interact with you guys. We talk about our experiences in life, if anything happens or has happened in the past. And that's pretty much it, you know, and we show footage and images when we can. And, you know, if that's a grift, then I don't know what else to say, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and look, a lot of people have a concern that there's a ton of people jumping into this space right now to financially capitalize off of it. Well, thank you, Lori. That is, thank you so much for that. That you are our first super chat, and I am going to.
We gotta write that
literally
down.
Smile. I'm taking a screenshot of that, and I'm putting that in my Discord server in the Hall of Fame section, because it's almost like you get your first. It's like when you open up a business, and you
the first
get that
dollar
first
you-
dollar, right? And they frame it. You know what I mean? So it's like it's a kind gesture. And full disclosure, there's a lot of shows that I watch that when I can, I send 5, 10 here and there. You know, people that I'm friends with. I have some buddies that just stream games over on Twitch, and once a month I drop them $10, $20 because, you know, like, they're my friends. I support their work. It's just, you know, it's courtesy, you know, from my perspective, but it's not a requirement. You know, they love the fact that I show up and support them with or without it. But
For sure.
it does help to go back into the show as well too, right?
That's all it really
equipment.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, like I have a little, you know,
We'll get him a full charger.
I have a Google Doc filled with things that I know I could get to, like, improve the show down the line and such. You know, there's certain types of cameras and lighting systems, and just, you know, to eventually down the road, you know, potentially improve the situation, software and whatnot. And the costs are laid out, and it's like, well, you know, with super chats, that's what I would go out and get. It's like when you're a content creator. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I know that's not why you guys are here. But, you know, honestly, when you're a content creator, it's like, what the hell do you think I'm going to spend my money on? I'm going to take the money to make my content better. Truthfully, that's like, do you know how good it feels to get like a new camera or like, you know, anything of that sort? It feels good. It's like, oh wow, look at, like, I remember when I was doing my thing and I got monetized on my channel, and then I built my PC. I was able to build my PC because of super chats, and that changed my life. I am only here right now because of super chats and the fact that I was able to build my PC. There was a guy. I was streaming Star Wars Battlefront 2. That's like literally what my channel was known for at the time. Honestly, it was my whole channel. My channel was basically becoming a Star Wars channel. And I'm like, Jesus, this is not the direction I thought I was going in, but I'm having a good time. And this guy liked the conversation we were having in the middle of the game. And he literally donated like $300 to my channel in one shot. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? I was like, did you mean to send that? Like, I was making sure. I was like, are you absolutely sure? He's like, dude, love your channel, blah, blah. And I was just like, I am speechless. It's like, what am I supposed to say? Thank you. Is that going to work? Is that good enough? Like, it's not. You know, I can say
Shout out
thank
to
you.
Lori. Yeah, that's amazing, Lori. That's the first one. That's really cool.
It means
Really
a lot.
cool.
It does mean a lot because it's like I love doing this. I do. I really do. I love having these conversations with people and thinking outside of the box. When Digby's here, obviously on a normal day, all of us are here. It's a lot of fun. And like, yes, it does beat the day job. Yes, of course, I would rather be doing this than waking up early in the morning to go lift and move heavy ass furniture and repair bullshit in people's stinky, disgusting, unkept homes. And it's not everybody, obviously, but like, yeah, I'd rather be here, you know, making things and being creative. That's really what it comes down to, is creativity. It's just so much fun. So
I hope you created something for that button we're about to press, buddy.
Oh, dude. Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, I have some things in mind, but without further ado, 3, 2, 1.
Speculation Station.
Boy.
I was asking in the chat if French should make one.
Yeah, maybe that's what we should do this week, is like, for anybody that's new, speculation station.
How about Lori? How about since she put it?
Anybody, right? Well, I'm still going to do one too, but for anybody that's new, speculation station is always at the end of the show. And basically what it is it can be a statement. It could be a question from our end. It could be a photo, a video clip, anything that we want to leave you, the viewers, with to think about and ponder the rest of the day. That's basically what this represents. Yeah, sometimes it hits hard, and you're just like, oh, wait a second. All right, I'll tell you guys mine, and it kind of harkens back to something I said earlier, but I kind of want to press the point. Was Jesus Christ an experiment, an NHI experiment? Was Jesus Christ sent down here, created, or that whole situation? Was that orchestrated for some reason by way of experiment by NHI?
So to improve on that, would that include Buddha, everyone else, basically?
Sure. Yeah.
So
yeah, let's go with that. Was it like a strategic, orchestrated effort for a reason?
Hindus, everything. So was all of that experimental? According to like people like Tom DeLonge, that's what he says is definitely the case.
Yeah, maybe Peter Levenda too, right?
Levenda,
says,
what
if the religions were more right than wrong? Yeah, it's like to me it depends on what we're talking about, because I firmly believe that the mention of a singular God, deity in Judaism, in the Bible, has been tampered with, and that the original translations were meant to be plural. It makes much more grammatical sense in a lot of areas. It would explain the difference in behavior and motive, seemingly, between the God of the Old and New Testament. It makes a hell of a lot more sense when you change that to mean multiple beings. That does not mean I am discounting the existence of a God or a singular architect or grand higher power in the universe. Not at all. I am merely talking about the creation of man and how we came to be, and how the systems of government, how society is constructed, a lot of the things that have ancient origins, like in Sumeria, like, where did those come from? I feel like they were given to us. I feel like they were passed down from the overlords, so to speak. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It does. It really does. Like,
Friends made a good comment too. She says, we look at ancient people as being uneducated and naive. What if they were more spiritually connected than we are?
Oh, I think the spiritual aspect is quite likely, Fringe, quite likely.
100%.
That makes me think of Native American tradition a lot. Their connection to the earth, and it's like, maybe this is stereotypical, like in film, so I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I always picture like a wise old Native American man that like walks out of his teepee and he like smells the air, puts his finger out, and he's like, "It's gonna rain." You know what I mean? Like he was just so. But that's a beautiful thing to me. It's like he's so in tune.
The connection with nature.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I respect that. I
So-
wholeheartedly respect that. I know
So
what you're
if you-
talking about, Parsi. Parsi's talking about the.
Yeah. Parsley's kind of hitting on the same thing.
Yeah.
But what if you take it back to its natural progression? So Sumerians were the first recorded, civilization. So what if Zechariah Sitchin was correct, and that all these gods that they had were NHIs basically went out through the entire world, created their own, factions and religions and whatnot. So does it naturally progress into that, or is that all not connected to the spirituality of it, you think?
It's interesting to think about that. Because you also look at the mention of we look at Greek mythology, right? Like there's always like a pantheon of what is it, like 12 beings, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Well,
Council of
it's
12
back to
and
the
such.
Sumerians. Yeah. Everything basically, Sitchin says that there's an equivalent from every Sumerian god that they have that spilled over into the Egyptians, that spilled over into the Greeks, spilled over into the Romans, everyone, the Zoroastrianism, everything.
Yeah.
That they basically took over different parts of the world and they made their own factions / religions based around themselves and their pantheon, their brothers and sisters. So it's a weird origin.
This makes me think of what you and I were talking about before the show.
Mm.
So I found out just recently that and you guys will see this in that podcast episode that Matt did with Mr. Hogan from the Knights Templar. They were talking about Atlantis, and the Mayans apparently spoke of this higher civilization that may have visited them at one point, and they called them like the Atlas, or like there was a name. It's very, very close to the same word.
Where they were originally from, they claimed their original origin, their original city was north of where they were settled, and they called the city Atlan. Which is like almost at the
so
land.
Interesting. So
it really is.
The way I look at Atlantis is very simple. From the perspective of history repeating itself. When we look at the work of Plato is ancient history, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Plato was looking at Atlantis the same way that scholars do today as they look at Plato. Like to Plato, Atlantis was real and it was ancient history, and that's why he spoke of it. And now we know Plato was a real philosopher and thinker, and we look at Plato and discuss him in the same context, right? Like it's the same situation. Or looking back on history. Plato was looking back on history. Atlantis. I absolutely firmly believe Atlantis existed. Now, as far as like Paul, you said, it's like we don't know. There's an uncertainty as far as like the technology and such. I'm with you. I have no idea. I don't know. But the evidence for there being some sort of at least pre-Andaluvian, pre-Adamite civilization on this planet that may have been quite advanced, that evidence is hard to ignore. It's very hard to ignore. And I know a lot of mainstream archaeologists and historians, they like to discount it, and they kind of, get a little snooty about it. They shrug their shoulders like, I don't know about that.
I think Graham Hancock hit it right on the head. And I think in his debate with Joe Rogan, he was like, I think he stood his ground perfectly. Like the guy had nothing for him. And in his theory,
what was that other guy's name? Shiver Me Timbers or some shit? What was his name?
Dribble
something-
or something.
Yeah, it was something crazy where I'm like, is that
Flint
It's
Dibble?
kind-
I think.
Yeah. It was like, it's like, okay, so you're dealing with like ancient history, you know, which we can think of the earth and rocks and stones, and it's like your name is Flint. It's like
I just don't know how we
Usain
can go with
Bolt.
the
Is that
discount.
really your name? You're the fastest man on earth, and your name is Usain Bolt.
I know.
Like, is that
Coinky
that's one hell of a coincidence. I love Usain Bolt, by the way. Shout out to Bolt, fastest man ever. Dude was so interesting. So, I brought this up since we're about to close out the show. I brought this up, kind of in passing a couple times on the show. But I've really been thinking about it lately because we go off on tangents a lot. How would you guys now? Again, I'm not. It doesn't mean you have to literally respond to this right now. If you don't feel like posting in the chat, that's fine. But for all 370 people that are currently watching, how would you guys feel if we ended up doing another podcast? I don't know how often. You know, I'm not going to go that deep. But what if it was sort of like a Joe Rogan type situation where we just kind of go. We just go live and we just talk about anything. Like literally anything we can pick out of a hat, whatever. Because as human beings, like we have so much to talk about. Yeah, like I mean we stay in a very specific lane.
We do.
But like Joe Rogan, he'll bring on all types of different people. Like he'll bring on a fighter, and then sometimes, he'll bring on a guy that's like former military, or then he'll bring on a movie star, or then he'll bring on a musician, and, and it covers anything and everything that you can think of, right?
Yeah.
And some of my favorite episodes of Joe Rogan were the ones that were unexpected. He was like talking to like a hunter or something, and I'm like, this is actually really interesting. So just something. Well, we'll throw that in speculation station. How would you guys feel if we had another show like that where it wasn't just these types of subjects, but it could be anything at all? A grab bag of sorts. Just something to think about, because I have a lot of fun doing it, right? And we, I think, would have the time to make that happen, potentially.
We could do it for sure.
Yeah,
I
don't know
I
about
can talk about anything. I love.
Right, yeah, especially in your situation. I think Digby would be able to do it. I know I'd be able to find a way to squeeze it in somehow, some way. But it's something to think about, because it's just how much fun we have. Don't know what I would call it. Don't know how I would market it.
I already got it. I got a name. I've got a YouTube channel already saved with the name The Junk Drawer. Everybody's got a kitchen with a junk drawer that just throws everything in it, and that's what we talk about, everything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Now that I'm thinking about it,
I got one saved already.
There really is like a drawer in my kitchen.
Everybody's got one.
Sort of like that. That's interesting. So we are now we're now at the conclusion of the show. Any final thoughts, Paul, before we close it out?
No, good conversation, man. Good topic. I'm so super duper psyched for the new people coming in, and man, Lori, that took me by surprise. I was so happy to see that. That is
really nice.
So in full disclosure, I do volunteer my time 100% because I'm really here for these guys. I'm friends with them, but I really want them to succeed with this, and I'm fine. So do this.
The audience is growing every week, man, and we appreciate you being here, Paul, and obviously Digby is here in spirit and was here in the chat and probably went back to sleep, as he should, because he needs his rest. Digby, obviously. If you're still here, I'll be talking to you definitely very soon. Probably through
big Neil.
Feel better though, man.
Yeah,
seriously,
for sure.
That's a really nice thing to say, Neil. I appreciate that. It's weird. Like sometimes I'll get on and I'll see somebody like shared something of mine, and they'll be like, "Oh, this guy's shit" or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, you really think so? You know what I mean? I'm just like, are you sure? Like, that's really nice of you. Did you mean that? Like, but
It's really
great
cool,
conversation as always, Paul. I sincerely appreciate you being here with me, man. And
love you
before we
guys. Love
go,
everybody in the audience.
if you're watching anywhere other than YouTube, please go to YouTube and make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. It is really helping. A lot of you have been doing that. That's why we were able to get the super chats going. We're now monetized. And obviously, one of the biggest things with that is it's easier to find the show. All you gotta do is type in UAPOD on YouTube, and we are like the first thing that pops up at this point. I think we're pretty close to it. And the fact that the audience keeps growing the way it has been, it's just tremendous. We see it every week. We're hoping to get Eric Mitchell on the show pretty soon. He's had some personal things to deal with. Not necessarily even saying that's negative, just, you know, people are busy sometimes. And
we're working very hard behind the scenes, guys. We got a lot of things in the pipe we're working on. So
there are some potentialities in the pipeline right now that I'll leave you guys with this. If they happen, one in particular, if that happens, I would imagine it would be our most watched episode. Yes.
No question. No question.
It would be very exciting. And there's just we put our feelers out as often as possible to get really interesting people on the show to speak to, because it's not, I don't think of it in terms of like, oh wow, if we get so and so on the show, 1 million people are going to watch it. I think of it in terms of, yo, I want to talk to that person. I read that book. I saw your documentary. I like you. Let's talk, because I enjoy it. We should, and Parsi, I love that idea. I love that idea. An experience or round table. Yeah, let's do it. Fringe, you're invited. That was easy. I got to hit up Steve Bassett too, because I know he was open to doing a Q&A. And while things are slightly quiet right now, maybe it would be good to get him on the show to give some insight into what's happening in Washington. If they're, you know what I mean? I mean, he knows everything that's going on in Washington. I don't know how he does it. So impressive. Sorry about my video getting weird earlier. Yeah, shit happens. What are you gonna do? I'm still here. You know, a lot of people, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people that probably didn't even see it happen because they're listening, right? You got your earpods in, you're working out, you're at work, you're chilling on the couch, you're making dinner, whatever it may be. Road trip, lads. Do a session here in Ireland. We can have a few pints. I will keep that in mind. My brother actually went to Ireland a few months ago.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
That's right. Oh, man. You're going to get me drinking when I don't even drink anymore. My God.
One day I'll get everybody to a video.
Parsi, we will work on amending that situation best that we can. Well, I'll hit you up. No worries on that, my friend. For Paul, Digby, and myself, I'm Tom Thompson. Yes, that's my real name. Can you believe that? Unbelievable. And I'm the third. They did it 3 times. Holy shit. What the fuck? Thank you for watching this episode, this edition, this version, this one time of the Unidentified Anomalous podcast. For Digby, Paul, and all of you here in the chat, we love you. Take care. We'll see you guys next week. You know what's really funny? I haven't ended the stream yet. I'll tell you guys a little secret.
Right when we think we're going.
When you're in StreamYard, and this happens to me every time. I don't know how I still manage to do it. I hit end stream, and I'm like, okay, it's over. But what happens is a box pops up, and it says end the stream ? And you can hit not yet or end stream. And it's like, I hit the button, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta hit that other one. Love you guys. We'll see you next week. For all of us here at UA Pod, we love you. Take care. Be safe. Talk to you soon.